Welcome to That's Inclusive, where we talk about disability and what it means to live a full life engaging in our communities. What does that look like, and how can we work together to make our world a more inclusive place?
Hey, welcome to another episode of That's Inclusive. Today we're talking about Direct Support Professional Month. Vanessa and I have something to share with you guys, and we have a couple of great stories from caregivers. There's a reason why you can get a doctorate in human resources. Hiring and retaining good staff takes skill. I can't tell you how many times Jim and I hired a personal care attendant, and a couple of weeks in discovered that they couldn't handle a key piece of the job. We ended up working around their limitations. We look at each other and ask why we didn't scream for this. Then we go, oh yeah, we're not HR professionals. But it's not just us who could use a post-secondary degree. Paid caregiving work required a lot of what HR people call soft skills. You're going into someone's home and providing some really intimate services. Good caregiving requires emotional intelligence and maturity that very few people in any line of work have. You have to know the official rules of the program you're working under. You have to balance helping someone live their best lives with following those rules. You have to know who the boss is. Is it the person you're supporting? Is it their guardian? Can you help them advocate for themselves without overstepping your bounds? You need to be willing to subject your own moral worldview to theirs. Maybe they want to do something you find questionable. Are you good with that? This is just a peek at the mental gymnastics required to do this important work, not to mention all the physical work you put into it. I always cringe when I hear paid caregivers talk about how rewarding the work is. Yes, something that you do 8 more hours a day needs to be rewarding. But if you're coming with all these emotional wounds, you're hoping this work will heal, that's a problem. It's not the job of the person you're caring for or their family to act as your therapist to replace the missing relationships in your lives. We ask so much of care professionals. They deserve to be paid well and have access to their own care. We've had several who can't get the medical or mental health care they need because insurance is a part of the deal. Jim and I want all DSPs and other paid caregivers to know how much we appreciate them, and we're working to help get the support they need. Here's a couple of their stories.
My name is Molly. I have the absolute honor and pleasure of working with a young man. I've been working with him for a little over 2 years now, 2.5, wow, almost 3 years. A young man with autism. And I had worked other jobs sort of in the human services sort of thing. I was a driving instructor for a while, and then when the world shut down, everything shut down, and I started seeing this therapist. There's a lot going on in my head, and getting to know this therapist and her getting to know me. I've always wanted to like fix things, take care of things, and kind of I throw myself into that. And so she got to know me and knew that I needed a job, right? My driving school job had shut down, closed down, and forever. And she asked me if I'd ever heard of a position called DSP. And I was like, no, what's that? And she told me a little bit about direct support professional, and you help just help somebody with whatever it is that person needs on a day-to-day basis. And I looked into it, and the place was hiring, and I started off in a float position. So I'd be working with one person for a few hours during one day, and then go and hang out for a while with another person. And I got to know several people, and then there was the first individual I spent time with, and was trained to work with. Basically, his program hours were about to expand, and the company I was working for was about to hire a permanent person, and they were going to have me train her. And I'm just like, I'm going to train her, and she's going to take my seat at this table, and I'm going to miss him. I had already started to like get a connection and really feel like, I don't know, like just sad about the prospect of parting ways. And so I talked to my company, and I said, I'd really like to be not float staff anymore. I'd really like to be like permanent, and can we just put me here? And they did. And that was, 2 years ago now. And it's been the best 2 years of my life, working wise. Life is still life, of course. But I've learned so much, just so much about just about myself, because you learn what you can do, you learn what your strengths are, you learn what maybe your weaknesses are. And I've learned so much about communication, because the person that I work with is minimally verbal, and he just has certain ways about him that have really taught me a lot. The last while now, probably about a year or so, we've been working on it's okay to not be okay. He doesn't want to talk about it when it's not okay. You ask him how he is, good. All right, he's good. Nowadays he'll say relaxed. He wants to be relaxed. He wants to be happy. He wants to be just good. And don't we all want that? So it's been a journey, and doing relaxation techniques and just talking about how it is okay to not be okay. It's like such a wonderful reminder of just the humanity in all of us, and it's just been really, really incredible.
Hello, my name is Sue Fernley, and I just want to share my caregiving story. It seems like I've been on an adventurous roller coaster ride since 2019, when my daughter, who was 35 at the time, had stomach issues and got a colonoscopy, and we discovered that she had colon cancer and would need operation, chemotherapy, and a lot of caregiving. So she lives in California. At the time, I owned a campground. But before the campground closed, I flew out to California and started my caregiving with my daughter. From there, my son decided, he was 40, he was older, and decided to get a colonoscopy. Also, he was diagnosed with a large tumor in his rectum. So he has 2 children and a wife. So after I left my daughter, flew to Rhode Island to be with him to caregive. And he also, his was a little bit more intense. He needed radiation, he needed a bag, he needed operation, he needed chemotherapy also. And it was a long process with him. And again, I was with him and his family for a good year. During that year, COVID hit. He had to go to Boston to have chemo. There was no one around to help. His wife went into a rehab at the time. So it was me caretaking the children and him. So that was the beginning. And then from there, my brother, who had heart problems, we owned a campground, as I said before, a family campground. I went to the campground with him, and he was in the last stages of his life. So I was with him when he died with hospice. And really the only family member with him. And so that was very long and a hard thing to go through. He died in September. 2 months after that, my mother had dementia this whole time. My mother will be 87 in February now, and my father will be 89, or just turned 89 yesterday. So after my brother died, I found my mother in the driveway one morning in December, the beginning of December. She'd fallen. She's fallen several times, broke her arm, broke the humerus bone in her arm. And so that was the beginning of caretaking and living with her, sleeping with her for a while. Again, my father drank heavily and gave my mother, who has dementia, alcohol too. So the falls were many and many broken bones till finally she had terrific pain in her stomach, rushed her to the hospital, and she had pancreatitis from the alcohol. So that had to stop. And then right after my mother had broken the humerus bone in her arm, I get a call in the morning, and my husband, who'd been dizzy for a good month, calls me and says he can't get out of bed because he can't, he's had a stroke, is what we found out happening. So I'm still in this process of caregiving. It's one thing after another, family members. And this is my first visit to sharing with other people and listening to other people's stories at this conference. And it is the one thing that through all of this has given me hope that there are other people out there who can help me, encourage me, can listen to my story, but I can listen to their story, and that I'm not alone, because I have felt alone. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to come here today. And I wanted to share that because we're in the process now, this very day, of putting my mother into a nursing home, which I don't believe she's going to like. And I have very mixed feelings about it too, but that's my story. And it's probably going to continue, but we shall see. So thank you for listening.
So I'm Suzanne Austin, and I'm the caregiver for 2 adult children. I was the caregiver for both of my parents, and I'm also a professional caregiver providing case management for a community mental health center. And I came late to this career change. And one thing that has been a surprise to me is to find out that all of the things that I did before starting my work as a case manager serve me in my role. So taking care of both of my children with their different medical complexities, helping my parents navigate their medical situations and all of their insurance situations at the end of their life, help my job as a cashier in the grocery store and a bank teller and a medical secretary and a medical biller. None of those things would I have thought would be important in my role today, but they are. So this is something that I try to bear in mind, that everybody has their experiences that they might not be aware can help somebody else.
My name is Joy Tiviage, and I work actually in a brain injury adult group home. And my story is about a gentleman that I advocate for. And all our coworkers were sitting in the outside living room, and we were all just chatting. And my little buddy Tom, I'll give you that much, was in finishing his shower. And Tom has some anger issues, part of his brain injury. And a different worker had set up his clothes. And not knowing that things have to be in order, they were out of order. And in that realm, poor Tom screamed in such a manner that I call it like Fred Flintstone. It was just this huge volcanic, angry whoa that we all came running. And when I opened the door, he's on the toilet, and he's got all his clothes on, And I said, Tom, what's the matter? And Tom says, my shirt's inside out. And I said, he can't stop. He's very upset. So we're telling him to breathe. Just take some breaths. Take some breaths. And I can't do that. I can't do that. It took him a long time to bring it to center. Well, he finally did, and he says this all the time. You're a queen. So the interesting part of the story, really, to me, is it can be everything can be going so well for somebody, and it doesn't take much in a brain injury for them to be thrown off. And the whole house came running because he was explosive. We were like, what happened? What's wrong? And it was this simple thing of his shirt was inside out. So that's kind of my story. I really have a ton of them, but it's been a pleasure to work with Tom, and an eye-opener for all of us. That's really, I have a ton of other stories, but that one kind of quickly, that was recent, that stood out.
My name is Carrie Duran, and I caregive for my daughter, Katie, who's 12 and experiences the developmental disability of Down syndrome. So a story about caregiving for Katie actually just happened this morning. I am a single parent and a working mother, and to try to get my daughter out of the house on time to be able to go to work is always a challenge. Katie has a set routine every morning, but there are just some mornings where she has a mind of her own and decides, I'm just not going to go to school today. I'm going to stay home. And she will do everything possible to make us late until I decide, all right, fine, you don't have to go to school, which never happens. But that's what she's trying to do in making mom late to work. So in sharing that story, I know that isn't a story that is just for parents who have a child with a disability or that they're caring for. That happens to all parents, but it is kind of on the behind the scenes, behind the curtain. There is a lot to just starting our day. There's medication, there's breathing treatments, is it the right clothes? Is the tag on? Is it the right texture, the right length? Is it the right color? And even the outfit she decided on last night is not the outfit she wants to wear anymore. So there's so many different parts to it. Is it the right shoes? Do we have her braces in? Do we have her hearing aids? She wears hearing aids now. Are they charged? Does she have the right coat and her hats and mittens? And again, I know these are things that all parents do, but there's always a little added element of surprise when you're caregiving for a 12-year-old who thinks that she's 19. And she's just full of so much personality and a joy, of course, but getting ready in the morning and trying to get to work on time is always a little interesting when you're caregiving for a child with an intellectual disability who has her own agenda and her own plan for the morning. So every morning I just say a little prayer, hope for the best, and keep a smile.
Okay. My name is Bud. I'm a caregiver for my wife, who has had MS for 22 years now. And up until the time we came to Concord to extended care situation where we are independent livers, my wife is now wheelchaired. So I've been a caregiver for a number of years. And I think I'm blessed that I understand it's a labor of love. I have a background in biology, so I understand some of what's going on and can ask questions, though I don't get it all. Not everybody can be a caregiver, I don't think, but those who can, it is a labor of love, and it requires a lot of self-discipline, highs and lows, but it is something that becomes what your life is supposed to be at that point. And it feels very good to be a caregiver, even on the tougher days. I feel fortunate that I have found a place to be where I have good assistance. And if we need long-term care, we'll be able to get that. But my hope is that we can go all the way through on our own. Thank you. She's been a real trooper. She was on her feet for most of 15 years of the 20 years. Been a good sport, has a good attitude. But as with MS, many different things happen over time that make it more and more difficult for her. But in the environment that we are in now, which is a long-term care situation, socially, she's been able to keep being kept alive and feel that she has purpose, and that's a good thing. We love each other, and we will do this as long as we can.
My name is Blanche Sowers, and I was a caregiver for my husband, Jim. And one October day, we were to go shopping for a few items at Market Basket. As I'm going out the door, I said, "Oh, wait a minute." And my husband pulled the door shut. And I said, "Oh, I don't think I have the keys." They're in the car. I went to the car, no keys. Now, my son and daughter-in-law had gone up north in New Hampshire to hike on a mountain and said, "Can you take care of Dad for the day by yourself?" I said, "Oh, everything will be fine." But now I'm locked out of my house. So I was to go get a book at Gibson's, and I had the gift card. So we went there. We spent 3 hours in a bookstore. And then we went up north to Allen's restaurant. We had lunch there and had ice cream for dessert. Now that was only 1 o'clock. So now what am I going to do for another 5 hours? So we've been up to Still Hill, whatever it is. So we went up and drove around up on Steel Hill and Sanbornton and came back, and now we're coming down, and I get into Concord, New Hampshire, and we needed to get milk and bread. So we stopped at Market Basket to get our milk and bread. Having driven my red car that I owned at the time, we walked in and I set Jim down in the area, and the clerks all knew him, and we got a cup of coffee. Now, I walked around with this cup of coffee and walked over to my husband, handed it to him, and in all seriousness, he said to me, "You know that lady that drove in the red car in here? Tell her I'm ready to go home." And I said, "Oh," and I was laughing. And now the lady in the red car was his wife, me. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I need 20 minutes to get bread and milk." Now, this October day, we didn't get milk earlier because I was afraid it would sour. And so I handed him his cup of coffee and I said to him, and I'm laughing the whole time during this, and I said, "Jim, if I see the lady with the red car, I'll tell her you're ready to go home." Now, knowing the manager at the Market Basket, I turned around and there is Tom, over 6 foot tall, standing there. Now, my reaction when I turned around and saw Tom was, my husband didn't recognize me, and I burst into tears immediately. But I've been laughing the whole time that I was responding to my husband. Eventually, when we did arrive home, my son did come with a key to open up my house. And I really want to say that I learned to, as a caregiver, to respond with favorable reactions to my husband. He was an relatively easy person to take care of. And I am glad that I was able to take care of him until a few months before he passed.
Hi, I'm Linda Phelps. I'm caregiver for my son, Ian. He has received a traumatic brain injury 14 years ago from a gunshot wound to the head. They thought or told us the night that it occurred, he wouldn't walk or talk, or he'd pretty much be a vegetable if he lived. Well, I'm here to tell you 14 years later, he is alive and well. He walks. He was at Crutched Mountain for a year. And we were told at that time that after a year, you're pretty much where you're going to be. And I am here to tell you that is not true. He came home a year later in a manual wheelchair. Well, we've gone from a manual wheelchair to a electric wheelchair, which was a challenge learning to drive that thing for him. When we moved from our apartment, we had to have every door casing changed, but the maintenance guys were so good about it. And because, in learning to do stuff, accidents happen. Well, he went from that to a walker, which he used for probably year and a half. And now he walks with a cane. Talks fluently all the time, just like before. And he still plays his music. He plays the piano keyboard. He remembers and does the frets on his guitar. Because of apraxia, he has some trouble with strumming. But anything can come in time. Support them, love them, let them know that whatever they think they can do and whatever they want to achieve, they really can. Because it takes support, it takes a lot of hard work and perseverance. And if you're willing to put the time in and do that, the sky is the limit. So that's my story.
My name's Isadora, and I've been a temporary caregiver for both my mom and my husband. I have a funny story about my husband and my caregiving journey with him. My husband had open heart surgery last year. And if you know my husband, you know he's kind of a control freak, and he likes everything to just be perfect and organized and to know everything in advance. And that's not the case when you have a health emergency. And especially he needed a triple bypass, so he had open heart surgery. And when I went to see him after surgery, he had all of these tubes and wires everywhere, and there was a little black box in his lapel pocket that was just had wires that were kind of attached to him all over the place. And at one point, he just got so exasperated because he was, powerless in the condition that he was in. He had to depend on the help of other people. And he was just driving me nuts to the point where I had to say, look, you and your black box, just go sit over there and wait for someone to come and help you, okay? You cannot be in control right now, and he started laughing, which of course sent him into fits of pain because he had just had open heart surgery. And even though, we both started laughing at that point, and we still laugh about it. Sometimes I'll be on the couch and I'll look over to him and he'll be chuckling, and I'm like, what's so funny? And he'll look at me and he'll say, the black box. And so we have that kind of shared experience where it was a situation that really was very serious, and we were able to find some humor in it. And thankfully, everything worked out and we can still laugh about it.
September marks Direct Support Professional Month, when the disability community brings awareness and celebrates those who dedicate their careers to the field of caregiving for people with support needs. Without direct support professionals and home providers, many disabled people would not be able to get out of bed, get dressed, feed themselves, or obtain basic necessities for survival. Others rely on support to engage in their communities, pursue employment and education, and navigate a complex healthcare system. For some, the support of a DSP enables them to spend time with family and friends, in a meaningful way. The New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities wants to reflect on the incredible impact that direct support professionals have on the lives of the people they support. Your commitment and dedication bring us closer to living out the promise that people with disabilities can live, work, play, and dream in their community. It is because of you that disabled people can have authentic relationships with their families and friends. We thank you. Please help us spread awareness about the crucial position that DSPs and home providers hold in our state. Help us to advocate for appropriate training, pay, and benefits for this workforce so they can continue to provide the imperative support needed for ourselves and those we care about. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vanessa Blaze, and this was a production of the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities, produced by Isadora Rodriguez-Legendre and Vanessa Blaze, with many thanks to Josh Hardy and the rest of the crew here at Concord TV. We love to have guests with differing perspectives. These views are personal and do not necessarily represent those of the DD Council.